back to the Mindful Apron. I'm Penelope, and today we're going to be baking bread. I love making bread at home. It's way easier than it appears, and it's a great way of slowing down your activities, feeling connected to the world around you. The kneading process, giving the bread time to rise, it gives you time to slow down your mind. It gives you time to slow down, think about your day, think about what you're providing to your family. The recipe and the ingredients are listed below in the description, and I'm going to walk you through this step by step. It's totally straightforward and you can totally do this. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need about a cup of warm water. This should be warm but not hot because you have to activate the yeast. If the water is too cold or too hot, then the yeast is going to die and it won't reproduce, which makes the leavening action to rise the bread. You're going to aim for about 105, 110 degrees Fahrenheit, but you don't need to make this any more complicated. You're just looking for warm. Just test it. You know what warm feels like. It's okay. You're going to take 1 packet of Active Dry Yeast, snip it open, and add to the cup of warm water. And you're just going to give it a stir. I like to use the back end of a wooden spoon. Now you're going to let this sit for about 10 to 15 minutes. You'll know when the yeast is activated because the top of the water is going to get all foamy. So I will see you in about 10 minutes. Welcome back. So if you've waited about 10 minutes, your yeast water should be all frothy and ready to go. You're going to need a big mixing bowl, and you're going to take 3.5 cups of flour. Ideally, you can use bread flour, but a good quality plain white flour will work just as well. I'm using an all-purpose unbleached flour. That's what we go through most in this household, and it works just fine. Place the flour in the bowl. Gonna add 1 tablespoon of salt. And 1/3 of a cup of oil. I like to use coconut oil. You can use vegetable oil or any other oil you're comfortable with. You can even use melted butter if that's what your family likes. Just going to stir that through. You want to mix it through so the salt all isn't in one place before you start. And then mix the yeast and water. To start with, this is going to be really yucky and sticky, but that's what you're after. After a few turns with the spoon, you're not going to be able to do much more. So at this point, there's nothing for it but to dive in with your hands. So just scrape the spoon off. And while the mixture is in the bowl, you're going to bring that dough together and try and incorporate as much of the flour into the dough. dough is going to want to end up being relatively moist to give the yeast enough liquid to work with during the rising process. But at the same time, you don't want to add too much liquid too early and end up with a soggy dough that you can't work with. So be very careful about adding extra before you really need it. A lot of people like to use a mixer with a bread hook to do this part, but the whole point for me is to slow down and to be connected to the world around me, to be connected to the food my family eats, to be a part of preparing that food for them. So I really like to do this by hand. I do the complete kneading process by hand. And yeah, it might take 10-15 minutes to knead out by hand, but that's only a small part of my day. When you've got most of that flour incorporated, turn your dough out onto your work surface. I've got a silicone mat here, but you can just do this on a normal work surface. And at this point, you're just going to start kneading the dough, trying to incorporate as much of that extra flour and extra little bits of dough as you can. Depending on the conditions in your kitchen, you may need to add a little bit extra flour, a little bit extra liquid. Mine is too dry right now, so I have here just a couple of tablespoons of milk. I'm going to add a drop at a time. Just to help me pick up those bits and get the dough into a workable shape. There we go, it's coming together now. And you'll see that pretty quickly the dough ball starts to come together. And this is where you're going to start kneading it. Kneading is just a repetitive action where you push down and out on the yeast, fold it back up into itself and repeat. You're going to do this for about 10-15 minutes. After that time, the texture of the dough will change. You'll be able to tell that the consistency is just different. And at that point, you can tell that the kneading is complete. So I'm going to continue this, and I will be back in 10-15 minutes, and I'll show you what it looks like. Be right back. It's been about 15 minutes of kneading now. And you can see that the dough has come together to be a much more elastic consistency than it was before. It feels much more pleasant to work with my hands. I make bread most days, and I use that 15 minutes time when you just stood here, can't really do much else. I use it to pray and to thank God for the ability to be here with my family, the ability to make bread for them, to be home. It just gives me that moment where I can start my day slowly. I can talk to God. I can connect. I can be aware of what's going on in my life. I can think about what's going on for my family, what needs to be done that day. It just gives me a few minutes to take stock. Okay, so there we go. We've got the dough in a nice little bowl ready to go. The next thing is to let it rise for the first time. I have a bowl. I'm going to grease it. Any way you want to use Any way you want to grease a bowl. I use pan baking spray. Up to you. I'm going to place the dough inside. I'm going to cover it. You can use cling wrap, just a clean kitchen towel, whatever you want. And I'm going to place this somewhere warm for about 45 minutes to an hour. You want to wait until the dough ball has about doubled in size. That's when you're going to know it's ready. Hi, welcome back. So your bread has been resting for about 45 minutes or so, and it should have risen to about double its original size. You're going to want to turn it out, a little shake. At this point, you're going to want to be gentle with the dough. You don't want to overwork it at this point. You're going to want to punch it down, press it out. Form a large rectangle. And then you're going to want to form it into the shape loaf you're going to want to make. I'm using a standard 8.5 by 4.5 loaf tin. I'm going to spray this down with some of the non-stick spray, and then I'm going to form the dough into a shape that fits inside this. To do that, I'm just going to fold the sides of the dough in, then roll the dough up. So fold the ends in like that, roll the dough to create the cylinder. Spray down the baking dish and place the dough inside. Now again, you're going to need to let the dough rise. Again, you're going to want it to double in size. This should take about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on the conditions in your kitchen. I like to cover it with cling film this time, just personal preference. Some people like to use a dish towel, whatever you want to do. I'm going to go ahead and cover this with cling film, and I will meet you back here in about 30 to 45 minutes. You probably want to go ahead and preheat your oven at this point to about 400 Fahrenheit. See you soon. After your second rise, you can remove the cover. And you see your bread has filled up the baking pan now. We're just going to dust the surface of the loaf with some flour, just a little bit, just for that homemade feel. Okay. I'll wipe my hands off here. And now you're ready to pop this in the oven. It's going to take about 30 minutes. You'll know when it's done when it has a nice golden color, and when you tap it, it sounds hollow. So 400 degrees, 30 minutes, and I'll see you back with the finished product very soon. You're doing great. Welcome back. You see, I've got my loaf out of the oven now, although it's still very hot. You can hear that hollow sound. I'm looking forward to cutting into this, although it does slice easier if you can wait until it cools slightly before you do so. I don't know if we'll be able to wait today, but we'll try. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy living life with peace, love, and happiness at home. Thank you for joining us at the Mindful Apron. Please subscribe and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.